We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, we have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
It's a very interesting question.
The Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Tell us, a commissioner of police, tell a politician, back off. You have no knowledge of the law. You have no knowledge of law enforcement. You cannot force my officers to do the wrong thing.
But that is somebody's son. That is somebody's child. That is part of a family. And I think that is the part that they are missing out.
Because E and F are apt to be used oppressively.
It's like because we don't see disabled people as sexual beings, which is ridiculous.
You mean they don't want to listen to your version of science? They have their own science. You have your science.
What we need to do is teach people to think and not what to think.
Today, it's too bad that everybody do what they want.
If I could forgive Bernard Ford, then I could forgive Bob Morris too. And today, on this day, I no more have anything in my heart for what he did.
The education system has to be very fluid and dynamic because we're living in very different and changing times.
Treating all your citizens equally, all your citizens fairly, recognizing each group, not discriminating against one or the other.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this. So I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Viewers and listeners, a pleasant good morning and welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, we do apologize for the late start as we were having some technical issues with one of our guests, but I believe that issue has since been resolved. Now, lately, experimentations with artificial intelligence have reached a critical mass in the digital marketplace. The evolution of AI continues to astonish the mind. They're not just good at the technical aspect of creating quote-unquote art, but appear to be genuinely creative, producing works that not only match the competence of a highly skilled artist, but can be surprisingly interesting and even beautiful. Now, of course, everything still depends on the human who is entering the prompt to tell the AI what to do. Nobody who sees these things in action can doubt that we have entered a very strange new era in which a great deal could be done by hand will soon be automated. Now, many artists are, of course, up in arms about the new AI programs, and with good reason. Some are furious that their works have been used as a training ground for data without their permission. Others fear that corporate clients will simply turn to machines to do the work that used to be done by human hands. Now, artificial intelligence is also causing the cost of image generation to plummet. In a capitalist society, a capitalist world, where everything depends on for survival on the value of their labor in the marketplace, a massive drop in the value of a skill will cause widespread suffering. Now, many professions, including those of the paralegals, programmers, market researchers, customer service agents, financial analysts, and journalists, yes, journalists, are at risk of becoming obsolete in less than a decade. Now, OpenAI's hugely successful ChatGPT not only writes bad jokes and slightly better poetry than poets themselves, but is even helping to write published research papers. The newly released GPT-4, for example, is already being used to write entire books. My caution here, folks, is buyer beware. Some folks who may claim to be published authors are in fact using ChatGPT to write their books. But generative AI has a very dark side to it, and this is barely talked about, and that is the wanton labor exploitation that is perpetuated by Silicon Valley. AI companies in the developing world, for example, they use labor from the developing world to do a lot of their AI work. And while developing countries should welcome the economic opportunities that comes with artificial intelligence and the technological revolution, they should also be wary of that dark side. To build AI models, for example, like OpenAI's DALL-E image creator or Meta's Llama language model, those companies require a massive and endless amount of data, which generally has been acquired by a process of scraping the internet. But AI models are what they eat. If you feed them a ton of data, they will give, if you feed them a ton of low quality data, the output will in fact be that of a low quality output. Now, this is where the exploited labor of African, Indian, and some Caribbean laborers come in. Their job effectively is to clean artificial intelligence training data sets, removing bad or unsafe content, and providing labels for text, images, and other inputs. But part of this job takes a toll on the workers. These folks are tasked with constantly consuming the worst aspects of humanity, all to ensure the safety of what those on the other side of the process experience as a human-free tool. This work is done at an incredibly low set of wages, largely based in Kenya and in South America, as well as in India and in other parts of the African continent. Content moderators are often paid a measly sum of sometimes less than $2 an hour to do these tasks. These techno laborers say that their work has left them with life-altering post-traumatic stress disorder. The signees further claim that they weren't warned about the horrors of this type of physical labor before starting. Now, while we think about artificial intelligence and extol the virtues of artificial intelligence as an efficiency tool, it is also important to appreciate the dark side of this new technology, and we should be cautioned accordingly. Folks, this is the Bubb Report. We thank you for joining us this week. Please remember to like and share this live stream if you're over on Facebook. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellan Bubb. We'll be right back with the first segment of the program. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, we are very happy to present this very important segment to you following last week's developments in the news. Now, of course, last week, the United States Corporate News Networks reported that returning White House occupant Donald Trump has developed a contingency plan to deport unauthorized migrants in the United States to a select number of countries in the Caribbean region, including Grenada, if and when their home countries refuse to accept them. The reporting suggests that these countries include, but not also, are also limited to the Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas, and Panama. This means that thousands of people could be permanently displaced if the next White House occupant is able, through his largest deportation operation in American history, his words, leaving immigrants in unfamiliar countries with uncertain futures. The next White House occupant also wants Mexico to accept non-Mexican immigrants. Now, groups such as the American Civil Liberties Union fought Trump on this issue in his first term, and they say they are prepared to do it again. According to them, quote, "We sued over this type of policy during the first Trump administration because it was illegal and put asylum seekers and migrants at grave risk," ACLU lawyer Lee Glennert told NBC News. Now, spokespeople for the Turks and Caicos Islands, Grenada, and Mexico all rejected and denied claims made by the reporting from NBC News. Of course, people from the Trump administration have also not publicly commented on this proposal. Now, last week, however, all of the countries, while they have denied that they will not be accepting, they did not indicate whether or not they actually had conversations with the Trump transition team. And he had to make sense of all of this week. We have been able to assemble an esteemed panel of experts on both international affairs, immigration, and law. And we're happy to be joined by Mr. Jomo Thomas, who's a returning guest to the Bubb Report, as well as Mr. Jeffrey Prudhomme. Of course, in Grenada, we know him as the political leader of the Grenada United Labour Party, but in the context of the United States, Mr. Prudhomme served as a U.S. military soldier in the Army, and of course, he's a U.S. military veteran now, so he will be able to tell us all of that, as well as Mr. Ronald Otley. Mr. Ronald Otley came in with the generous recommendation of Mr. Jerry Hopkin, on this issue. So we thank Mr. Hopkin for recommending Mr. Otley to the program. Gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, this news of the mass deportation gambit, as I call it, sent some shockwaves and jitters throughout the Caribbean region. But I suspect, true to form in the context of Trump, we can expect anything. So, gentlemen, I want to begin first and foremost by having you react to that initial news. Anyone can start. And of course, we have to preface this by saying that all of the countries have denied discussing any of those proposals, and we don't know the sourcing of the reporting from NBC News on this. So please proceed. Who wants to take a stab at this? Mr. Otley?
Okay.
Since you are in Brooklyn, let's start there.
Yeah, okay. Yes, my name is Roland Otley. I'm a practicing attorney in Brooklyn, New York. As usual, I think this time around, the negative effects have been a little bit diminished because we've kind of sensitized to it from the first term.
Mm-hmm.
The Caribbean population, it's intriguing to me if most of them that are concerned about Trump's policies are looking to immigrate to the United States or just looking to visit. Immigrants that are here in the United States, they're panicking, and it's causing a lot of confusion and fear and depression. And people the last term, because of his policies, were not able to utilize public benefits, healthcare, housing assistance, and so forth. So, I mean, the immigration policies has broader implications other than in the immigration proceedings. And Trump has been well known to ramp up the external security of the border wall, as well as the internal security with the deportation and making it quite difficult for immigrants to be able to get a green card. So that's all well known. I think at the same time, I think we also have to keep in mind that there are a number of organizations who will be opposing and challenging the policies that Trump is going to be reinstituting. So they are familiar with them and they've had prior litigation. So their challenges and oppositions would be, I believe, sharpened on this second go round.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Pradam.
Well, what I would add to that is that the first go around, the policy that was was a policy of cruelty, and it affected family separation. It affected over 4 million children that were separated from their families. And even as of today, even through the last 4 years of the Biden administration, where they promised humanity and order and fairness with the immigration policy, is not all the children were able to be identified and reunited with their families. So to have a second go round of a policy of cruelty, because there is no law that prohibits the administration to separate kids from their family. So there's no law on the books that does that. It's one that is implemented and driven by national policy. And that's where the danger lies. And so, yes, the ACLU and all the other people in the legal profession are ramping up and preparing to put up a strong defense against the implementation of that policy to try and moderate the incoming Trump administration in how they deal with the immigration situation. And that has long-range consequences for Latin America and the Caribbean in particular.
Yes. Jomo, initial reaction, but I suspect I can anticipate what your reaction would be. Just unmute as you give your reaction, but I can anticipate as somebody with a sort of a global South epistemology, as someone who attended Howard University like myself, perhaps I suspect what your reaction will be. But welcome to the show, sir, and just unmute your mic as you react.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Look,
Yes,
I think there's a African-American historian called Gerald Horn. He has a program called Around the Horn. He's a prolific writer, and I think that we should spend a lot of time listening to him if we want to understand. He comes out of the University of Texas. For one thing, I think that a lot of the confusion and the chaos that we talk about is precisely what Trump and his team wants. Because all of that sound of cruelty is intended to feed red meat to his base. Now, this political sound and noise which we're hearing, which are intended to pass as policy, are going to meet stiff resistance from the business community. I saw a report yesterday which said that the federal government makes $59 billion, with a capital B, $59 billion from persons who are illegal immigrants. That states make $15 billion. And part of the reason for that is that immigrants, many of them illegal, are used to good use by the business community in the United States. And they are not going to allow the efforts of the Trump regime to push back against their bottom line. Some of it is going to happen, but fundamentally, you are not going to have the removal of all illegal immigrants. What the US ought to do is to formalize in some ways, much like Ronald Reagan did back, I think, in 1983, 1984, the Immigration Act, which tried to put into place, because I think that then the Reagan regime was the last one to put in place what might be called a comprehensive immigration overhaul. And they may need to do that again. But you see, a lot of time we listen to the political noise and then we say Trump with this and Trump with that. But remember, after 8 years of Obama, many people in the know called Obama the deporter in chief, for the simple reason that for many in his term, his two term, he had deported more people than all of the persons, all of the presidents before him. And Trump simply ramped that up. Biden did not do anything that stopped it. And Trump is going to ramp it up again. So some of them are undercover, as in the case of Obama, and there were an overwhelming amount of deportations. And Trump is going to be open in your face, because that's like one of the identity issues that these politicians raise all the time. So yes, the legal community would push back against it. Many cases would be filed. Many of them would go all the way up to the US Supreme Court, and there would be resolutions there. But certainly, I think that people are going to push hard to make sure that they remain in the United States, that they're able to help their families. Many people are going to be frightened by it, but they're gonna dig deep, and many of them would be able to survive this what Dr. Hahn called a renewal of America's counter-revolutionary tradition.
A renewal of America's counter-revolutionary tradition. Mr. Otley, I will bring you back here, because that is something that people say in order to counteract Trump's harsh deportation rhetoric and so on, that, well, Obama did it, and, Obama was the deporter in chief. But I do believe that we have to contextualize that as well. Would that be correct to say, Attorney Otley, in respect of comparing Trump's deportation to Obama's? Just unmute your mic, sir. Just unmute your mic again. Yes.
Well, yeah, there is a distinction, and Trump is opening the focus very broadly. So he's looking to disrupt like businesses if they're utilizing immigrants, migrants in their business services or products or whatever. So he wants to enforce that heavily. So that's going to cause some disruption in terms of business and hopefully not the economy. Overall, it may affect the economy if he's going to do all of this mass deportation, as he says. But although Obama's numbers were very high, he targeted those criminals and those people most dangerous to the national security, whereas Trump, he is causing like a whole extensive kind of fear and everything. No one's pretty much protected at all. He's also looking to remove DACA for those dreamers, all of those children who've been in the United States, probably all their lives, to now have to face deportation. So when you look at what Trump is doing compared to what Obama did, I think it's clearly a different type of approach there. So I can't say that they're equivalent. Now I don't know how Trump is planning, because we haven't gotten any real details, how he's planning this whole mass deportation. And I guess the issue will be addressed here at this conference, that he plans on utilizing the military to help to enforce the border. And this is not something new, because this has been done by Bush, by Obama, by Biden. So this is something that's known that has occurred. How Trump tends to enhance that service by the military in securing the border, given what the crisis is now, would be very interesting, and we'll have to see how it works out and the challenges that those efforts may meet by those people who are, looking for justice and doing things in the fair and legal way. Look at his cabinet picks and the people that he's trying to put in there. I mean, everyone's looking at all of these things to see just, how much worse than his first term this term may be. So in terms of the immigrant population, you definitely know that he's coming for you. And I think what the immigrants need to do that they did not do the last time, and I think some of these organizations would also need to make a much more robust effort to inform the immigrants, so that if they need healthcare, if they need rental assistance or other kind of services, they need a resource that they can go to, so that they can know what services they can safely take without having to worry about negative immigration consequences, and what services they cannot. And to let them know that, some of these policies that Trump wants to implement, like the public charge rule that he had put in place that was so burdensome for applicants, will take time before they get implemented. He only has 4 years in there. It'll probably take 2 years, and that's about how long it took the last time. And, who knows if he has more robust challenges, whether he'll be able to achieve that in the 2 years, because he has such a ambitious, anti-immigrant policy.
Yes, and let me bring in Mr. Prudhomme here. Mr. Prudhomme, welcome to the Bubb Report. Of course, the last time you were here, sir, the conversation was around the Grenada United Labour Party. I noticed you're not wearing your signature whites today. I don't know if Uncle Priya, Uncle Gary would be happy with that. But you have your star pin there, I suspect.
I do have my Grenada flag right there.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, you should also have the star there, sir. Yes. Just saying. But Mr. Prudhomme, the reason why we brought you here, sir, is because you served in the military, and one of the features of the second Trump administration, at least according to their policy proposals, is to somehow use the military in a much more intensive way by way of the declaration of a state of emergency to enforce this mass deportation plan that he intends to proceed with. Now, can you talk about how declaring a state of emergency would give the military more power of enforcement to go into what Republicans and conservatives call, shall we say, sanctuary cities, where undocumented immigrants are protected from that kind of federal enforcement?
Well, I think overall, when you look at what would happen, the Trump administration would have to work with governors and mayors. And so there is already a sort of protective shield for immigrants who are in blue states, because they have to get the cooperation of the mayors and the governors. But in regard to the use of the military, it's against the law to use the military domestically. And in a state of emergency, if the president federalizes the National Guard, which is normally under the National Security Act, falls under the direct control of governors. But the president has the authority under the national emergencies to federalize them. But still, in all the times that they were used in support of immigration policy, they were used in the background to support administrivia, but not directly. So that is where the prohibition comes in, and that is where the red lines normally wouldn't cross. So the only way that they can do that is to increase the immigration folks like ICE, and so it would have to be a more robust attempt. But to use the military there is limits of how you can use the military domestically by law.
But if because the president of the United States has the power to declare a state of emergency, correct? And there is no stopping him from saying that, you know what, I want to, as you just said, federalize the National Guard to proceed with this mass deportation plan that I want to go ahead with. And who is to stop him from doing that? Certainly not the Supreme Court that is packed with conservative justices. Certainly not Congress, who they're all sycophants at this point to the Trump agenda.
Yeah, but it would have to be all of it would have to be ironed out, and it would have to be the specifics, because even under those circumstances, in terms of securing the border, if the border is already secure, we're talking about internal policies. So the military cannot be used for that. They would have to use other assets.
Mm-hmm. Okay, they'll have to use other assets. All right, so Mr. Pradham, stick a pin there. We'll have to get back to you to speak to some other military matters, especially in relation to how the military engages in that type of immigration enforcement. But let us get to questions of international law. And let me bring back the rest of the panel here. International law as it relates to migration. So, Jomo, I will start with you here. What does international law say about deportations? And can you speak deportations in the context of countries refusing to take back, if you will, nationals from, take back their nationals from another country? What does international law say about that? And as an attorney, can you also speak to the impact of deportations on the Caribbean, and especially in the context of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where you're from? Just unmute again, sir.
That's where we are going to have the biggest pushback, because
Yes.
you see, much of what Trump intends to do would run up against international law norms. So, for example, it is not proper, although many governments, we see it in Italy, we see it in Europe, with Hungary, with President Orbán, we see it with the British Conservatives when they were in, and we have seen it the various United States executives, where they tend to run roughshod over international law and legal norms. So when when I practiced in the United States, I practiced immigration law as well, and was able to ensure that many people get a chance to achieve asylum and to regularize their status in the United States. Because remember, the central point is that if you can show a well-grounded fear of serious injury or harm, if you are returned to your state of origin, international law protects you. If you have a situation, as so many of these governments are doing now, remember the British government did it when they developed this plan, I think it was last year or the year before, to have these mass deportations to Rwanda. And they had that decision. Apparently, Kagami's administration in Rwanda had decided to do it, and then it imploded. I think part of the reason why it imploded is that the matter went to the court, and the court did not look unkindly on the executive's decision. But certainly, I think and this is why so much of law has become politicized now, because many of the policies of the United States, we see it in Haiti, we see it in Cuba, we see it in Venezuela, we see it in Bolivia, we see it in Nicaragua. Many of these policies, particularly where they're ramping up these illegal sanctions, these sanctions that run afoul of international law, they're putting so many pressures on these states, which essentially goes back to the Kissinger-Nixon notion of making these economies scream. Once they make the economies scream and money start drying up, we saw it in Syria, where the United States captured the oil fields in Syria, which made it less likely for the Assad regime, which collapsed this morning, as we are reading now, to get monies to take care of its own people. You had a flood of refugees. Many of them have well-founded fear, but they didn't get a chance. Many of them were not allowed to process their claims and so on. Many had to run. Many were deported without due process. So those are some of the problems. As it relates to St. Vincent and to the Caribbean, it is less likely that we would have those kind of immigration problems, except in those countries where we are and St. Vincent is one, where we are having this tremendous rise in killings. We counted our 50th homicide for the year, this year. Last year we had 55, the year before we had 42. So people may be able to make claims saying they have a fear because their son was killed, their brother was killed, and so on and so forth. But outside of that context, I don't think that we are going to have, because you don't get asylum based on economic deprivation. You don't get asylum based on the fact that you are poor in Grenada or St. Vincent or Jamaica. You have to have some founded fear that are driven by politics or religion or some other major question which is protected by international humanitarian.
Yes, Jomo. Yes, Mr. Oakley, I see you wanted to jump in here. Just unmute your mic and jump in, please. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to first say where the military is concerned, as the gentleman said before, the military cannot be used to enforce the law. So they can't be used for that purpose, but they can be used for support. Now, what types of support? There's a lot of intelligence and a lot of technology that the military has at its disposal. Now, whether there's some strategy to utilize whatever beneficial or experimental technology that would help to stem the flow of, illegal migrants into the United States. I think, if it would be more effective than having a border wall, maybe the attempt should be made. That is, one of the ways that I think the military, if it hasn't been applied in this way, because Biden has like about 2,500 National Guards there and so forth. And, I don't know if it's possible to have other military personnel or service branches, provide some kind of additional support in terms of trying to stem that flow. So that's one aspect. And as Mr. Thomas was explaining, in terms of the immigration laws from an international perspective, yes, you have all of those humanitarian concerns and so forth, and Trump is against those types of humanitarian relief that some immigrants may desperately require. So all of those are things that people are looking at, and cumulatively, yes, it's all kinds of reason for all kinds of various fear and so forth. And I want to say that in deportation, the process of deportation in the United States starts with a notice to appear. And that is basically a charging document that tells them why they're being deported, and it explains whatever the facts are and so forth. And it also asks, mentions how they came into the United States and what their nationality is, so that they then designate a nationality. Maybe someone may not want to go back to their country and try to designate another nationality that the United States may be able to deport them to. Now, those particular countries that you had mentioned before that were willing to take on some nationals being deported from the United States, although they're not nationals of that country, may want to do that for whatever reasons in that country. But that person shouldn't be deported to that country if they're going to be facing some kind of harm or some kind of persecution of some sort. They should not be deported to that country. They should, there may be an option where they could have national monitoring of that particular person if there's no place that the government could deport them to. So that would be one particular aspect of the removal proceedings if they go that far. But you'll have the notice to appear, and whatever defenses that you could bring, you would go to a master calendar hearing where the judge would basically hear your case, hear whether you require an attorney. Now, you have a right to an attorney, a right to cross-examine witnesses, for an interpreter. You have those types of rights, but a lot of immigrants can't afford the attorney, because the attorney, unlike in criminal cases, where if you don't have an attorney, one will be appointed for you, and that would be at the government expense or some nonprofit's expense. And but in the immigration context, the immigrant has to pay that bill. You're entitled to an attorney, but not at the government expense. So that's how that works. So that's one big problem for many of these immigrants. And then you go through the process, and whatever defenses that you present, you can see then if the government, even though you have a defense, is still able to make their case. If you disagree, then you can appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals, and if they rule against you and you have good grounds, you could go to a federal court and have the federal court review the matter for you to make a decision. Basically, that's how that removal proceeding would work. Now, that's for the regular type of removal proceedings, but you also have the expedited removal proceedings where you're on the border, and in that case, you are determined whether the determination as to whether you stay or go will not be by an immigration judge, an immigration court. It will be by the Customs and Border Protection Officer. They will make that distinction, and they will just immediately remove you from the United States. So pretty much, that's the way that I see some of these things playing out. And as much as Trump has this this massive agenda, it's really kind of hard to figure out how procedurally it's going to unfold in his administration.
Mr. Pradam, let me bring you back here, and of course I'm going to bring back Jomo here as well. Now, you gentlemen, I'm sorry, you gentlemen are speaking as if we are living, that we would be experiencing a normal president. Donald Trump is not a normal president in the sense that he has desecrated all norms, in the sense that now he is appointing sycophants to all federal agencies, people with very questionable pasts, checkered pasts, if you will. Let us take, for example, the gentleman who is tapped to become the head of the U.S. Defense Department. That is Mr. Hegseth, who has a very checkered past. These people, and of course, perhaps one of the reasons why they said Trump appointed him was because of his, quote, good looks. But you also notice in the Trump administration, there is only one Aaron, I call him perhaps, well, let me not say that. But there is only one person of color in that administration that looks like us here. But Mr. Pradhan, I will start with you. Who is to say that what Trump did because of course the narrative was that in his first term, he did not understand government. He didn't know anything about government. But now in his second term, he knows how the system works. So therefore, he is going to find ways to skirt all of the norms that you gentlemen are articulating here. Mr. Pradhan, I will start with you on that.
Well, two things. When they did removals in the first round, Guatemala was one of the destinations that took people that were outside, that weren't their nationals. So that was one of the main destinations. And secondly, the baseline for the Trump administration was a separation policy of kids from families, and that we still can't account for them. If you remember, kids were held in cages, etc. It was just, that was the extreme level of the deterrent that the Trump administration wanted to have. And the guy that they're bringing back to head ICE, who had worked in and left during Biden's time, if he gets reappointed, he knows how to do it. And so I expect extreme measures in the Trump administration carrying out this comprehensive policy. The only check that was mentioned earlier is that immigrants play a very important part in the economy, and that would cause significant disruption in the economy. And one thing that Trump likes is the market going up and things of that nature. What this would do would lead to a downward spiral in the economy, because immigrants would be fearful even now that they would start not participating or spending their resources. They're not coming out to access care and all the various things that would lead to long-term dislocation in the economy, and can also lead to serious medical issues that will cost the economy in the long term. So all those things may be restraints, but going forward, I think that it's going to start in a very in-your-face, upfront, that create the level of fear. But because of the disruption that it will cause, it would have to be moderated.
Mr. Otley, over to you. Again, due process is the cornerstone of due process is supposed to be the cornerstone of American jurisprudence, that everyone gets a fair hearing, that the United States respects rules and orders and things like that. In the context of Trump, as I said before, everything that you've discussed here in respect of different processes, would you agree that that would come under a serious threat with the second Trump administration?
Well, I need to also put that into context as well. Yes. Trump and the branches of the government, the legislative branch, they're the branch, that's the branch that makes the laws. And the legislators make the immigration laws. And in making the immigration laws, they have plenary power to discriminate. Okay, whatever they say the immigrants has to do, that's what the immigrant has to do to get into the United States legally. Okay, understand that. From that perspective is where we're looking at Donald Trump. Okay, now the policies and the burdens and so forth, you know, he has made that for some of the immigrants, and for others he just outright banned. Okay, he would just ban them. Now, if the Congress bans them, the Congress banned them. Okay, but they can do that. That's part of the immigration law and the legislation. It's only afterwards once you're in a particular situation where those rights would kick in, because you don't have those type of rights when you're doing expedited removal. That's not there. Those are the things that one could argue and litigate. But how many people is it going to help, and is it going to really change their policies? Now, all of these are things that we have to look at, and to better understand the situation, a lot more people would have to be educated about that process and see what they could possibly do, now understanding what his strategy is. And that would likely be maybe the best approach to what Trump is planning on doing, until when he gets in and he actually starts doing it. So, even though there's due process, I mean, and look at, whoever he's going to bring in there, and what kind of leeway they're going to allow him for their particular area, and consider also that some of these things are really the result of Trump and his and those who support him, because there was a bipartisan bill to provide more people at the border, to provide more judges for immigration purposes, to relieve some of the backlog. But he didn't want that, because that would have shown improvement in the administration, in the administration of immigration proceedings under the Biden administration. And that was one of the things that he argued about all through the campaign. And so, he's left the problem that he now is going to deal with the way that he wants to deal with it, as opposed to a bipartisan approach that would have probably included the due process rights and all of those things that you were talking about. But he doesn't want it to be that way. And what he's also doing with some of these picks is he's setting it up to show that it's not me, it's those Republicans and those Democrats who are not allowing me to implement the plan that I want to implement, this Project 2025. And he's showing them that he's on board, he's doing it, but others are impeding him. Not that he's not following it to appease his supporters. I mean, and all of these things, we have to keep track of so many things, and it's hard to focus when you have so many constant bombardment of Trump on the television, making this statement, doing this, and all the other things that he does, that he just make you keep on the television to just keep track of what things he's doing, so you know what's really happening with your life. It's
absolutely. But let us get to the specific Caribbean and Grenada, Turks and Caicos, and the islands that were mentioned. Again, all of the governments in those countries articulated that they did not hear anything from the Trump administration on this. One of the reporters who did this report, she covers the Trump transition team, and of course the countries indicated that is not something that they would in fact proceed with, that they would reject that claim. But let us talk about, however, the possible route that the Trump administration can take. And we want to begin by looking at Panama. So while some people are up in arms, some people are shocked by this. In fact, it was only this year that the Biden administration entered into an arrangement where Panama, that's the country of Panama in Central America, will be used as a country that would welcome unauthorized migrants from the United States. That is an agreement that the Biden administration entered into with the country of Panama. So this is not far-fetched. It is absolutely not far-fetched. And what is also not far-fetched, gentlemen, is the idea that the United States can use the big stick leverage to say, okay, You do not want to accept these unauthorized migrants? Well, we are going to do to you what we have done to Cuba, what we have done to Haiti, what we have done to Venezuela. Jomo, I would open that part of the conversation with you.
Well, certainly that can happen because governments have their leverage. Remember, if you go back to the Obama term, there was a time when the Haitians wanted to increase the minimum wage. And the push from the Obama administration was for that minimum wage not to be increased by the percentage with which they wanted to increase it, because there are a number of American corporations in Haiti that felt that the bottom line, their profit bottom line, would cut short if the minimum wage were improved. So you're right that the executive in a country as powerful as the United States has tremendous leverage, in much the same way as the example I gave before, where the British got Kagame in Rwanda to agree to accept persons, criminals who were coming out of the United Kingdom. Yeah. So you are going to have that push, you're going to have that pressure. But essentially, you mentioned Turks and Caicos as one of those places. If you're talking Turks and Caicos, you're essentially talking about negotiations with the British government, because Turks and Caicos is a colony for which the British have control over foreign affairs. In Grenada, where would Grenada put these people? Grenada is a small country of what, 18 by 13. Where is it going to put these deportees? Or in St. Vincent, where would they put them? So the best place, I mean, Panama does not have a lot of people. The landmass is fairly large. The US has a big presence there. They have just elected a very conservative president. So there may be some effort, and you yourself pointed to the fact that the Obama administration was able to negotiate with, I think it's President Molina of Panama, to do the kind of things that they want to do. It is possible as well.
That's the Biden administration as of July this year.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Biden's administration. So
the current
all of those, you can see the push and the pull there. Countries are going to be able to resist. I don't see how Grenada could agree to something like that. They don't have the land mass. They don't have the space to do it. And if if the US is pushing to send people out, and some of these people turned out to be criminals and so on, in a country like Grenada, that's going to be problematic. So I don't see, that the commercial administration will be committing political suicide if they allow for these people to come in. Just remember, of the countries in the southern corner of the Caribbean, Grenada has very, very low homicide rates. I think they had 15 homicides last year, and it was a big problem. In St. Vincent, we had 55. And people are now almost desensitized to these killings that we hear at least once per week here. If you were to bring those kind of forces into Grenada, and then that begins to spiral out of control, you can be sure that that is going to have a bad impact effect on the commercial administration, and they would not want that. They are only, what, 2.5 years into their term, and they at least are beginning to triangulate for a possible second term. So I don't see how they would allow that at all.
Yes. Let us get to Mr. Otley. Mr. Otley again passed his prologue here, meaning that Trump has a template. And Trump would say, well, the Democrats are doing it, so why can't I do it? and force these countries to take these migrants.
Kilan, if I could say one other thing before Mr. Otley come in.
Yes, sir.
I think that we take, with all of the weaknesses in the United States system, I don't want us to think that Trump is going to get everything that he wants. There's going to be tremendous pushback. There's going to be pushback on a popular level among the people themselves, including Americans, not just immigrants. And there's also going to be pushback in the legal community, the ACLU, all of those legal organizations that are going to push to ensure that whatever happens does not happen in the same way in which the Trump administration may be thinking that it can do it. So you have you can go through the state system, you can go, and then you can go through the federal system, the state system in terms of protection. But I think that Mr. Otley made the point earlier, and I think one of the things that we need to look at is where the states are refusing to do as the executive wants. They may try to cut back in assistance that are going to those states to try to wring their hand to ensure that they do certain things. But I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. I don't think it's going to be a rollover. I think there's going to be tremendous struggle. And as Mr. Hartley said, there's only 4 years. You may have to bob and wheel and do your thing to ensure you get past this administration, hoping that another administration may come that may be less vigorous or less aggressive in the ways in which it goes after immigrants. Because the immigrant thing is not an economic argument. It's really a political argument to feed the base of those persons who believe in cultural purity and racial purity and so on and so forth.
And you hear these racist rhetoric around that they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. And of course, this whole idea of a replacement theory of immigrants replacing the white population in the US and all of that racist stuff that the incoming Trump administration would speak to. But Mr. Otley, on that question, again, who is to say that Trump will not force these countries? Again, this reporting is thinly sourced, and the countries have rejected those claims, and they said they're not going to be proceeding with such proposals. But who is to say that Trump's big stick policy will not force these countries to do what he wants them to do?
Okay, well, let's say that the countries do what Trump wants them to do. Okay, and they agree. How many other countries that he could convince to accept these deportees? The law in the United States for immigration proceedings still prevail, and he will have to get past that process in a legal way. Otherwise, each individual can make an individual challenge, and these organizations that are supporting these immigrants will file lawsuits to cause more bottleneck with these types of cases to prevent the opportunity, because they have to first have an order of removal. And in going through that process, the immigrant has to designate a particular nationality as to where they want to be deported. And so I'm not sure, the demographics of these millions, where they're going to go. I mean, if they're going to go to Mexico, whatever leverage he has to get Mexico to do it, they didn't want to pay for the border wall. So if they're Mexican and Mexico doesn't want to take them, once they get through that process, however else they go, the United States just want to get them out of the United States. But again, you're going to have internal in the United States protesting, as well as international protesters, that this is the new policy. Now, in terms of the separation of families and so forth, Trump did try to put that in place, but he had to walk back on that because it was unfavored. It was despicable to some people, and it didn't get the support that it needed for it to persist. And as was said before, some of these children were never reunited with their families. So, that's Trump's ambition again, and how exactly it's going to work, even if he gets those, it's going to take some time. I mean, he has to implement additional immigration judges to hear all of these cases. If he's going to bring in more, how are these cases going to be addressed if you're not going to get more qualified immigration judges, to deal with this? And when they're going through these proceedings, they have their due process rights, and they can appeal and everything else. That's going to take time. So, that process may take more time than the term that Trump has for the 4 years. So that has to be taken, into consideration as well. Now, I think for the Caribbean population, and St. Vincent and elsewhere, what I heard is a lot of people, they want to know about Trump's deportation plan and all, but one of the main things that they're concerned about is Trump's talk about removing birthright citizenship. He spoke about it at his first term, but he never really implemented any policy. And he's not going to be able to implement a policy of an executive order that's going to remove a constitutional right. I don't think even his conservative judges that he appointed would go that far. So, that's one thing that if it's going to be done, it would have to be by an amendment, which would be very onerous given the political tension that we have right now. And Trump really only has a very slim margin in the House and as well as the Senate. So it's going to be difficult for him to implement not just some of his, very unfavorable immigration policies, but for some of his other policies. And he'll probably have to make concessions so that some of his policies can get through. He knows that he's going to be facing a lot of challenges and uphill battles. And he's shooting for the worst of the worst, hoping to get something that's not really good.
This is such an important conversation, gentlemen, but we have to get to the next segment with Jomo, with a comrade of yours. That's Mr. Peter David. He's coming up in the next segment of the program. Unmute your mic, sir, if you want to make any comments there. Your comrade Peter, are you going to be in Grenada for next week's convention, Jomo? Were you invited to the convention?
No. I'm gonna stay in the safe confines of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I may get as far as Union Island and peep over, but certainly not. There potentially to be a lot of fireworks. It's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. I think it's unfortunate, though. I think it's unfortunate what is happening, but that's the way politics is in the Caribbean, and maybe to a large extent across the world.
Yes. Mr. Prudhomme, I will go over to you, sir, for some closing comments. Of course, Mr. Prudhomme, just know that I will be relying on you for over the next 4 years, especially for on your expertise on military matters. I see you campaigning there, GULP.
Yeah. Well, I got to flash it every now and again. But the thing I would say is that I think that the Caribbean as a whole, we have to get ahead of the news cycle. Particularly, CARICOM should make a statement collectively, as opposed to identify a few countries. But if CARICOM gets ahead of the story and takes a position on it, it would be put us in a better light and has more weight than the individual countries. So in terms of collective security, similarly, they should also look at the impact it would have on the Caribbean. And the Caribbean argument is that tourism is a big piece. If we are affected in that way, it's obviously it would affect, or it would have dislocation in our economy, which would have ripple effects back to the States. Because part of U.S. policy is to have stability and continuity in the region. So by having those types of policies that could have this level of impact, it's sort of like going against your own interests. So we have to be able to articulate it in such a way that the Trump administration, unreasonable and extreme as they are, can see some light as to how they approach this policy. And what was mentioned in terms of birthright, that was the 15th Amendment, and that is more or less settled the law. So that would be a difficult thing even to tackle. So I see that in terms of domestic policy, the Trump administration, one of the big things and for their base is the immigration removal issue, but that translates into foreign policy as it affects the region, and we have to take a collective position to try and moderate their approach and how they treat us but we only can do that collectively and not individually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I want to say, I want to
Otley,
say,
go ahead, yes.
in terms of the birthright citizenship, where people from the Caribbean come to the United States for whatever reason and give birth then of their child in the United States, that child, pursuant to the 14th Amendment that was placed back in 1868 because of the freed slaves, allows that person to be a U.S. citizen, a born U.S. citizen with all the citizenship rights. Now, what the Trump administration could do, which would be a problem, is not remove that right, but to impede those visitors who are pregnant from getting a visa to come to the United States. That's a feasible method that they could employ. That, I don't know how one could, really defend against that, given, the plenary power that the U.S. government has as to who it lets into its country. Now, if they're going to do that to the Caribbean women, then certainly they should be doing that to the European women and women from other parts of the country as well. So that, from an international perspective, you would see the discrimination there, and everyone would certainly point that out.
Well, yes, Mr. Otley, there is so much I can say on this, but my role here is moderator. Any other final comments here, Mr. Otley?
I want to say I thank my friend Jerry Hopkin for inviting me to do this presentation. He's the Consulate General in Toronto for Grenada, and I've known him for a number of years. And I really appreciate seeing Jomo again down in St. Vincent. And and Mr. Purdom, I appreciate meeting you as well, and it's been a pleasure, and it's an honor for me to be on this program trying to impart knowledge to those listeners, and I'm hoping that they resonate with the things that I said, and they change their position from depression to being to aggression, and trying to not just get depressed and not do anything, and stand up for your rights and for those of your family and loved ones, and see what you could do for them.
Yeah, it calls for resiliency on the part of Caribbean people, and historically we are a resilient people, so we'll push back.
Yes, and over to you, Jomo, finally for some closing comments. So just go ahead. Yes,
I think that, again, thank you for having me come on to share my 2 cents. It's good to be on with Mr. Prudhomme. It's good to be on with Roland. I saw his face, I saw his name, and I'm saying this young man may be someone that I know. But yeah, I remember back in the days when I was practicing in New York, he was coming in and beginning to do good work, and evidently he continues to do good work. So thank you all for having me on.
Thank you, team. It was an honor.
Thank you.
Yes, gentlemen, this is a very, very important conversation. Again, a lot happening, and people may think that what happens in the United States does not affect us. But as the late Prime Minister Maurice Bishop of Grenada says, when the United States sneeze, the rest of the world catches a cold. In the context of Trump, when he sneezes, I think the rest of the world will catch orange pneumonia. So, we have to be very, very vigilant in respect of how his policies will affect the Caribbean region. So, panel, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Thank you. Viewers and listeners, of course, this is the Bubb Report. You're watching us. If you're just joining us, please remember to like and share this week's live stream. If you're over on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel as the channel continues to grow. And of course, you can catch a repeat episode of this week's edition of the Bubb Report on the Grenada Broadcasting Network television Wednesday at 5 p.m. as well as on WPG10 television. So folks, what we will do now is we will take a quick break and come back with our exclusive interview with the Honorable Peter David, the Member of Parliament for the town of St. George and a contender for the leadership of the New National Party as it goes into a convention next week on the 15th of December. Please stand by for that conversation.
In the tongue of St. George, we have two lawyers contesting. But that is where the comparison ends. The people know Peter David. They know his work. They know his passion. They know his heart, the real heart. Sisters and brothers. And I'll tell you something. When Peter was practicing, and any young man or young woman go to the courts and don't have representation and they need help. When they need help, Peter David offered his services to those people free of cost. Where was Deacon as a lawyer in the country at the time Peter was helping the poor people of this country? Where were, I wouldn't say where you do, you know? It's not for the national platform. That new national party would not be hijacked by anyone whatsoever. You hear me? This new national party will not be hijacked by anyone whatsoever. That in the right time to come, sooner than later, without fear, sisters and brothers. A child from this noble political training school, sisters and brothers. A child from this noble NMP training school who's been in the belly of the NNP, who knows and experiences the highs and lows of this party. Someone who has the leadership skills. Someone who has genuine love for people. Someone who is selfless in service. Someone who comes from the belly and the bowels of the new national party. will lead this party while I can relax at home and watch in peace.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. Now, the New National Party, which is Grenada's second oldest political organization and the only party with the distinction of winning 3 consecutive clean sweeps at the national elections, will be capping off a historic convention next Sunday, December 15th. This convention follows a series of activities in its 40th year of existence, since its formation as a center-right organization on Union Island in 1984. Now, last week, the party held a banquet and major rally in the home constituency of its longest-serving political leader, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, who held up Emmeline Pear and some other young guns as the future of the party. Mitchell's rhetoric has shifted from saying he is not going anywhere to saying that his transition to the future of the party will be in the hands of the likes of Emmeline Pear and the other young people in the party. In fact, Mitchell says he is very satisfied that the future post-Keith Mitchell New National Party will look like, so much so that he will, quote, sit smiling at home in his rocking chair, unquote. Now, while Mitchell continues to heap praise on those who, what he claims, come from the bowel of the party, he has reserved his harshest, most bellicose, and most caustic rhetoric against another member of the party who has also indicated he plans to seek the leadership of the party in next week's convention. Without mentioning his name, Dr. Mitchell's riot acts against Peter David, the Member of Parliament for the town of St. George, has gone viral. And in a Beyond the Headlines comment, Dr. Mitchell quipped that he does not trust Mr. David. So why then is Mr. David continuing his bid to be the leader of the New National Party, given the leader's aversion to seeing him as having any future leadership role in the organization? Now, here to make sense of all of this is the Honorable Peter David, the Assistant General Secretary of the New National Party and the longest-serving Member of Parliament for the town of St. George. Mr. David, welcome back to the Bubb Report, sir. As we head into the National Convention, I do apologize for the late start to this conversation, as we are having a very important conversation.
That's okay.
Yes. Now, Mr. David, let's get into it because I know you're short on time. Mr. David, your political leader does not trust you. In fact, he said so not only on Beyond the Headlines, but he has said so in all of the successive zonal council meetings where he opened that volley in early September then. So, Mr. David, the question is, why are you going ahead with a process in an environment where some in the party do not trust you?
Well, Kellen, first of all, let me thank you for having me here this morning. You know, you said when you started, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to have here, because you said when you started, you were trying to make sense of it. And if I could do that, then I might be the brightest man on this side of the planet, because I don't understand it myself. In fact, I was saddened when you use those introductory clips around the time when I came into the party, because when I came into the party, it was a wonderful time. I was invited in by Dr. Mitchell. I came into the party. I've done everything I can do. And but here we are. I mean, I don't want to spend the morning trying to figure out why such vile attacks have been made on me. All I can say is this, that I feel a responsibility to the party members. When I joined the party, there were two things I got on that night in St. Andrew. I got a green shirt, symbolic of the party, and a copy of the Constitution. And that copy of that Constitution is what I'm following by doing what I'm doing. So, I mean, you know, everybody has a right to their views, Kellen. I don't want to go into it here now. If you know my history, I'm not one to want to engage in any rancor. I have always tried to find the peaceful medium, if you call it that. People may call it cowardice or not wanting to attack. No, it's just that I believe there's a large section of people in Grenada who don't want that kind of rancor. They want a discussion about development. We want to disagree, but disagree on how we develop. Do we focus on agriculture? Do we focus on housing? Do we focus on tourism? Do we focus on industry? And the sideshow, if I call it that, about the attacks on me. Well, Kellen, you know, I've sustained much worse than that before. And I'm here, still standing, still fighting, still pursuing what I believe is a mission we have as a generation, Kellen, to try to bring better governance to this country. So you would have to ask Dr. Mitchell the question. I was saddened because, you know, when you introduced the early clips with my early entry, it was very, 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 I had very nice recollections, and then you went into the other part.
Very reminiscent.
Yes.
You romanticized that time.
when I was expelled from the LDC, I was in a place that I thought, you know, should I continue? And I'm sure you would have asked me the same question at that time. And then I saw this my entry into the NMP as a new opportunity to do what I always do. In fact, Dr. Mitchell, in his comments in the rally, where my daughter was sitting next to me that you showed, didn't indicate the kind of person I am. That is who I am. And the truth is, Kellen, everybody knows who I am. In fact, I say to people all the time that what saves me is that I am an open book to the public. And explaining it is difficult. That once I indicated my intention to seek the leadership, then things seem to have changed. But it is what it is.
Well, but let us you know, and you said you have no clue as to why your leader has lost trust in you. But without mentioning your name, and of course we know who he's referring to. He can't be referring to anyone else in the party. He indicated that you were meeting with delegates, Mr. David, and also paying delegates, which some might say amounts to bribery. Now, Mr. David, on what basis was there a need to meet with delegates? And how do you rebut claims that you are engaging in bribery? Why are you meeting with the delegates?
You make the charge and then you assume it's guilty. You sound just like that legal system that I practiced.
Well, maybe I should have become a lawyer, but go ahead, sir.
First of all, I don't know who the delegates are. In fact, that's one of the issues we have. This issue of delegate count, because there is a mechanism that has been put in place to choose the delegates that I believe is quite unconstitutional. There are individuals in different constituencies who have been given that task. So I mean, I would be foolish to first of all try to bribe delegates, but secondly, I don't know who the delegates are. In fact, I have already penned a letter to the executive asking them that we need to know the list of delegates, because none of us knows that list of delegates, because the task has been given to individuals in each and every constituency. Now, I must say this, that the sister party to the LNP in Jamaica, the GLP, through its political leader, recently indicated, and I agreed with him on that political parties have evolved to become public institutions, and there needs to be transparency and openness, just like we demand in public institutions. I mean, the wholeness clip is there for everyone to see. And I would hope, because Jamaica does it, the Jamaica Labour Party does it, there is a list of delegates that one can go to. It's like asking me to campaign in the town of St. George, and I don't know who the electors are. The delegates are the electors within the NNP, and I do hope and I do wish that I can become aware of the national delegate list. Of course, I will know who is in the town of St. George because I'm in the constituency of the town of St. George and part of the mechanism. If the mechanism is to have the branch and the executive and the groups to choose the delegates. But I will wish that we, as contenders in the elections next Sunday, will have a copy of that list so I can know who we need to speak to convince. And not Kellan, this talk of bribery is absolute nonsense. Nobody's called my name, and I hope he was not referring to me, because certainly I don't know who to bribe. I mean, it's like, well, I'm going to fly over a constituency and drop a plane load of money and hope that delegates pick it up. It doesn't work that way. It's not. It's not even worth responding to.
No, Mr. David, let's talk about your relationship with Mr. Kennedy Budlow, who joined the NNP as well around the same time that you did. He seems to have a good relationship.
That's with not true, Kellan. Kellan, again, you seem to be not coming to me with the facts. Kellan, Kennedy Budlow was a member of the NNP as way back as Dr. Mitchell. In fact, he's known to have participated in that convention where Dr. Mitchell became the leader. So
in 1989. So thank you for that.
He's closer to Dr. Mitchell than he is to me, but he's my friend.
Then you are, yes. But let us talk about Mr. Budlow was heard in a conversation with one Django Thomas, and that might be the basis of mistrust that Dr. Mitchell has.
It can't be the basis of mistrust when the comment of mistrust came long before that conversation. In fact, the mistrust that was spoken of months ago. But in any event, Kennedy Budlow is his own man, and you can have an opportunity to interview him. But I don't speak for him.
Oh, you don't speak. And what about your relationship with one Django Thomas, Ian Thomas?
You know, Kellan, you must remember that I used to be a member of the NDC. In fact, you were there with me at the time. I have friends in every political party. Quite frankly, Kellan, I believe that we've become too divisive, that if you see me speaking to somebody who is NDC or who is PLM or who is GULP, you just had my good friend Jeffrey Prudhomme on the TV. Jeffrey and I grew up together, and he's the leader of the GULP. So the fact that I speak to Kennedy, or I speak to Django, or I speak to Deacon, or I speak to anybody is of no moment. I am known to stand for what I believe in, but to maintain my relationships with everybody along the way. Because, Kellan, my mantra, and I've always said, this is my mantra through the years, that we are dividing. You know, politicians are sitting on the top, attacking each other, and it's seeping down into the population so that neighbors and families and people are becoming torn apart on the basis of who is yellow, who is green, who is red, who is pink. We are one nation, one people. And, you know, I taped an address earlier that will be delivered tomorrow evening. And I urge people to listen to that address where I am calling for the unification of our people. And so, Kellan, who I speak to is a matter for me. My politics is a matter for the people. And that is what we should be speaking of. In fact, the fact that we are using so much oxygen to speak of divisive, what Jomo Thomas called earlier in your interview, unfortunate. I find it quite unfortunate, and we should be discussing what Donald
Trump and
those are the issues.
Yes, and we would get to that now, sir, in respect of the future of the new National Party and your role in the party, depending on whatever the outcome of this convention process would be. What is the future role for Mr. Peter David in the new National Party if you become the leader? If you do become the leader, there are still going to be those questions around unity and unifying and galvanizing the political organization. If you do not become leader, there would still be questions around unity and galvanizing the organization.
Well, I think
what happens post December 15th, sir?
Well, we have to get to December 15th. And one of the major issues I have with December 15th is what I consider to be undemocratic practices. I've raised it in the party. I've raised it with members of the party, what I call the gerrymandering of the voters list, the whole mechanism, the screening committee, for example, that's there, the fact that there are a few people elected by the executive to determine whether or not persons can run to screen them, the fact that in the constituencies we've seen complaints from constituency branches and leaders in the constituencies, in significant constituencies, that are saying that the list has been gerrymandered and that the list that will go to the executive is not a list that reflects the wishes and the desires of the people on the ground. Those are issues that we must address. And I think before we get to the 15th, the question is, will the outcome on the 15th be reflective of what the people of the NNP wants? You see, the fact is, Kellogg, as Mr. Holness said, and I agree, these institutions are public institutions and democracy must be transparent. The fact is, if there is gerrymandering of the list and if there are mechanisms that are not allowing for the right person to emerge, then it will not be the will of the people. You see, we must understand as members of these political parties that we represent the people. We represent the workers and farmers and businessmen and businesswomen of the party to ensure that the person who rises to the top is actually the person who the people want to be there. But when you have the gerrymandering and you have the screening committee and you have persons at the top taking, at the higher levels of the party, not pursuing the democratic process, then we have some problems. So what happens on the 15th is yet to be determined. What happens after the 15th, we can discuss.
So again, so let us talk about that, because you speak here about this screening committee, and Dr. Mitchell on the Talking Points program on Friday night, he also indicated that the screening committee is doing its work, but they have not reported. He said that 2 names were considered, but have you heard anything from that committee? Do you know who the members of the committee are? And we are just a couple days, we are a week away from the convention. Does that not put you and Miss Emmeline Pay in sort of a limbo?
Well, and from the beginning of this process, I've been in limbo. The attacks and everything that have come after me have put me in limbo. The screening committee is just another one of the things that put me in limbo. The fact that I was not invited to most of the zonal meetings, people wonder about my absence. My absence was due to lack of invitation. So yes, I am in limbo. I'm not sure who else is in limbo, but I'm in limbo because I have not heard from the screening committee with respect to whether or not, what is the position. The whole question of the existence of the screening committee has been brought into legal question by Dr. Lawrence Joseph, who was the architect of the NNP constitution. So there are a lot of unanswered questions as we go forward to the convention. I do hope that we will find a way to make all of this go away and focus on what needs to be focused on. We need to focus on how, as a party, first of all, we win the next general election, and secondly, how do we build this country? Because if we pursue this path, it is unfortunate, but I believe we are taking the party down a road that would make its ability to win the election quite difficult. Because when you proceed in a divided way, and I have done nothing in my view. If I've done anything, I'm sure somebody would have let me know by now, to divide this party. If we proceed in this divided way, our ability to win the next election will be in question. And I believe, that is why I put up myself, that I am the best person to unite this party, unite the country, present the country in an agenda, build the party, and take us into a successful election. I think I am. I've won the town of St. George twice for the NNP, twice for the NDC, which means I have cross-party appeal, and we need to win back people from the NDC if we are going to win this election. And I believe I'm best placed to deal with that.
So what I hear you here saying is that your platform is sort of a unity platform, which is different from Dr. Mitchell's message of a generational platform, meaning that he's going to transition to a younger generation in the way that the NDC transitioned to a younger generation. But Mr. David you are not part of that younger generation. So how are you going to? How are you trying to convince the delegates to vote?
I will tell you something that you will understand.
Yes, sir.
The Democratic candidate who appealed to the youth most was who? Bernie Sanders. He was the oldest member. Bernie Sanders appealed to the youth more than any one of these other candidates. I don't think it's a question of age. I think it's a question of your agenda and your appeal. I believe that I have a deep-rooted relationship with the young people of this country. I believe as I go around the country, the young people of this country see me maybe in my 60s, but certainly not old in the sense of old ideas. I think there needs to be a bringing together of all of the old, the young, and everybody around an agenda for development. Let's stop focusing on the age and let's focus on the agenda. You can bring in young people as happened with the NDC. Everybody has come to the conclusion that the youth in the NDC they are not doing what they were elected to do, despite the fact that they are young. There's a generation of people in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 40s who want to make a contribution. I believe that I am the person who can bring the youth, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s together to create an agenda and a platform for development. And that is what we should be focused on. Else we get caught up in the same rhetoric as we did before, who is young and who is old. That's not a problem. The problem is, how do we unify our people around a development agenda? Youth, 40s, 50s, I'm not sure where youth stops. Some people say it stops at 35. Some people say it stops when you're no longer able to operate. So to me, that's the agenda we need to move forward on. So I believe that I have the capacity to bring the youth. I have the capacity to bring the women. I have the capacity to bring the 40s, 50s, 60s. I have the capacity to bring businessmen. I brought many businesses into this country, the hotels. The 3 major hotels under construction now were brought in large part because of my initiative. I operated quite successfully in agriculture, in labor, in tourism, and in foreign affairs. So if you're talking about capacity, Judd, I believe I just have the best capacity to do that, Dr. Bubb, and I just want to present that agenda, but given the opportunity to have a fair opportunity at the convention.
Well, you keep saying you and I, and that was another issue there that, well, perhaps the New National Party, they invited you into the government. So it's not only you per se, I mean, I know you're campaigning, but you were given that opportunity and you served at the pleasure of Dr. Mitchell.
I served, I served, and I did succeed in my service. The question is, what was my performance? Everybody undergoes a performance test. And if you look at my performance in foreign affairs, my performance in tourism, when it was NDC, my performance in agriculture, my performance in all of the sectors, I believe that it shows me having the capacity to lead. My performance in the party, in mobilization, in bringing people. The Wickham poll indicated how many people came in with me from the NDC. The fact that when we came in 2013, when we supported the LNP, the fact that we won. So all of these things, Kellen, does give me what I believe are the credentials to get the job. In other words, yes, I'm interviewing with the job, and I believe I have the qualities that are required.
Mr. David, I do know that you have to go, and I want to respect your time. But is there anything else that you want to address that we did not cover here as we go into the convention? Of course, Dr. Mitchell and the team, they brought in the cavalry last week, the cavalry from St. Lucia and Jamaica. There was also a lovely banquet as well. I saw one picture with you and Sister Peggy and Dr. Brathwaite, but I did not see you at the head table, neither did I see you on the platform at the rally. Can you reflect on your participation in NNP 40th anniversary activities against the backdrop of what has been going on with your dear leader?
Well, I attended the activities where I had an invitation, and I sat where I was designated to sit. So I have no complaints. as my mother always said, I always know my place and what to do and what not to do. Kellen, my personality is such that I love to find common ground. Anybody who knows me, when I left the NDC, not left, but when I was expelled from the NDC, I maintained very cordial relations with all of them. In fact, when I was in the NDC, there were many people in the NNP who would meet me and say, Peter, you know what? We like you, but you're in the wrong party. So I have been known to be that kind of person who tries to pull things together. So yes, I do hope that we can pull it together in the NNP. I do hope as we proceed to convention and beyond that we could find a way. I worry that because of what I believe are some undemocratic practices, that the things are stacked against me. I believe the odds are high against me. If you're betting, you'd have to be betting really on high stakes there because of the fact of the history, the fact that I've been under severe criticism and attacks. But you know what, Kellen, I will not respond in kind, because at the end of the day, at the end of this process, we have to build a party. So at the end of it, Kellen, I am proceeding with my campaign. I do not know where we will be at the end of the week. I believe that the delegates list should be something that's available to all the persons in the campaign. I believe that we need to follow what Mr. Holness said in his address at our 40th anniversary, and treat our political parties as public institutions, having the same level of transparency as we are required to do when we form governments. So as we move forward to the end of the week, I know the odds are against me. I know there's a whole lot pushing against me. But you know what? I do hope that one day you will interview somebody who will say, you remember that guy, Peter David? He stood up and fought for what he believed in. He stood up and fought for democracy. Once you can interview somebody later on who says that, I will be resting in peace.
Oh, well, or maybe in your rocking chair, happily.
That would be better. That would be better.
Mr. David, any
in Washington and come see the monuments and stroll and talk about the good old days.
Talk about socialism and idealism and all of that. All of that, comrade.
By the way, let me congratulate
Yes,
you on that program you had earlier on the issue of Trump and his deportees. That issue, I agree with your panelists who are saying that while I worry about it, I believe that Trump is just trying to pivot in a particular direction. But it shows the rise of fascism, the rise of fascism throughout the world, that Trump could be the president. But I do hope that our Caribbean leaders stand up. On the last occasion he was there, I was a little bit worried about how some of them responded. I hope our Caribbean leaders stand up and respond with might to what I believe is an oncoming, and that they continue to fight for the embargo against Cuba, which is really devastating to that country.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cuba has done so much for us as a regional country as well. Mr. David, thank you so much. And of course, we'll be watching the space, sir, to see how that would unfold. Perhaps I may make an appearance in Grenada on Sunday.
I can nominate. If you join on Friday, I can nominate you on Sunday.
Don't go there. Don't go there, Mr. David. Don't go there.
Have a good one, Keller. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. Viewers and listeners, that was the Honorable Peter David, the Member of Parliament for the town of St. George, as well as the Assistant General Secretary of the New National Party, making his closing pitch with respect to his intention to seek the leadership of the New National Party next week at their convention. Of course, some of the cliff notes from his conversation included the fact that the delegates list is not available at least to himself. We don't know whether the delegates list is available to the other contender for leadership. And he also is claiming that the screening committee, which he's claiming was undemocratically selected, has not reached out to him in respect of his intention to his candidacy for the leadership of the party. So he's not even too sure whether or not his name will be part of that process, because the screening committee has not indicated whether or not it was approved or denied. So viewers and listeners, that in a nutshell was the conversation. In the interest of balance and objectivity, I want you to know as well that we did invite the Honorable Emmeline Pear to sit with us on the Bubb Report, and Mrs. Pear has agreed to sit with us on the Bubb Report, but that interview will happen after the new National Party's convention. So please look out for that conversation at some point in the future with the other contender for leadership, Mrs. Emmeline Pear, because we believe in ensuring that all sides get an airing on any issue that we are dealing with here on the Bubb Report. So viewers and listeners, thank you for staying with us, and we thank you again for watching this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Again, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, wishing everyone a pleasant week ahead. And of course, we do have a special Christmas show lined up for you, and you'll be hearing more about that next week as well. So thank you for watching again. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.